We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Tesam and Beis and Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 99b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa which said if a woman gives a man the raw materials to make jewelry, and she says, make this into jewelry for me, and through that it will be a kiddushin. So Rabbi Meir says that's a good kiddushin. The Chachamim say it is not a good kiddushin, and the Gemara now offers another explanation of the machlokas in that brisa. Rava says the kuli alma yeshna l'schirus mitchila v'at sof. It could be everybody agrees, both Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim agree, that when a person is hired to do something, it accumulates that the wages are owed, meaning to say, it becomes like a loan. As he's fashioning the jewelry, she now owes him the money like a loan. And it could be everybody agrees that if one is mekadesh with a loan in general, that's not a good kiddushin. So really, when he gives her the jewelry and he forgives her debt, he says she doesn't need to pay him for that jewelry, so really it shouldn't be a good kiddushin. And it could be everybody agrees that a craftsman does not acquire the improvement of the vessel, so he is not considered to be an owner of this jewelry. She's the owner of the jewelry, and so then the question is, why should it be a good kiddushin? And the Gemara explains, but here what are we talking about? What happened is that he added his own gemstone to the jewelry, so there is something of his that is being added. Rabbi Meir says, milva upruta daita pruta, that if he gives her, he forgives the loan to her, but he also adds a pruta. She thinks about the pruta as being what is making her mikudeshes, and therefore it's a good kiddushin. That's why Rabbi Meir says it's a good kiddushin. But Rabbanan Savri and the Rabbanan holds milva upruta daita amilva, that if he's forgiving a loan to her and he's also adding on a pruta, she's actually thinking about the loan, and since you can't be mekadesh with a loan, so therefore it's not going to be a good kiddushin according to the Rabbanan. And the Gemara continues with a pluksa dahani tanoi, this machlokas of whether daita apruta she's thinking about the pruta, or daita amilva she's thinking about the loan. That's a machlokas among tanoim in the following brisa, the Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, bischar sha sisi imach, if he says be mekudeshes to me with the wages of work that I did for you, eina mekudeshes, that is not going to be a good kiddushin. Rashi explains bischar sha sisi imach is kadeshli, again be mekudeshes to me with the wages of work that I did for you, eina mekudeshes, that is obviously not a good kiddushin. Since he's already done for her, he's returned to her everything he needs to return. It's essentially a loan, and again with a loan it is certainly not a good kiddushin. However, continues the brisa, bischar she'ese imach, with the work that I will do for you. So according to the Tana Kamma, mikudeshes, that is a good kiddushin. And Rashi explains, bischar she'ese imach mikudeshes, according to this Tana, de'ena l'schirus el levasof, because when it comes to wages, they only accumulate at the very end when everything is finished. So it's not really a loan. So when he gives her back the items that he has fashioned, mikdashalei bischaro, so then the wages end up becoming what he is giving her for the kiddushin, and it is a good kiddushin according to the Tana Kamma. Rabbi Nosson says, bischar she'ese imach, if he says for the wages that I will do for you, eina mikudeshes, that is not a good kiddushin, because he holds yeshna l'schiras mitchila v'atsof, that as he's doing the work, she owes him the money and it's a loan, so therefore it's a problem. V'chol shekein bischar she'asisi imach, certainly for work that I did for you, the wages in the past, that is certainly going to be a loan and it's going to be a problem according to Rabbi Nosson. And finally the brisa says, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Omer, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, be'emes amru, that really they say, bein bischar she'asisi imach, uvein bischar she'ese imach eina mekudeshes. Again, if he says the wages that I did for you or the wages that I will do for you, it is not going to be a good kiddushin. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi fundamentally agrees with what Rabbi Nosson says, that it is not a good kiddushin, even in a situation where he says it in the future tense, because yeshna l'schiras mitchila v'atsof. However, says Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, v'im hosef la nofach mishalo, but if he adds and he gives to her a gemstone, his own gemstone, so mikudeshes. So there Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says it is a good kiddushin, and the Gemara explains, bein Tana Kamma Rabbi Nosson, what's the machlokas between the Tana Kamma and Rabbi Nosson? Ika beinayu schiras. The machlokas is whether we say eino l'schiras elo levasof. That's what the Tana Kamma says. That's why it's a good kiddushin when he says bischar she'ese imach in the future tense. Rabbi Nosson says yeshna l'schiras mitchila v'atsof, so it's not going to be a good kiddushin, even in the case where he says bischar she'ese imach. And bein Rabbi Nosson and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, now the difference between Rabbi Nosson and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, what is he changing? Ika beinayu milva upruta. So there, as we said again, the difference is, let's say he adds on that gemstone, he adds on the pruta. Rabbi Nosson would say that is still not going to be a good kiddushin, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi would say no. If he adds on a nofach mishalo, if he adds on something of his own, so then we're going to say daita apruta, and it will be a good kiddushin. And the Gemara continues, Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Tavach uman uman shekilkel, if a slaughter, a shochet, is a professional, but he messes up the shchita, chayiv l'shalim, he does need to pay. That's considered damage that he is responsible for. And Shmuel explains, mazik, who is considered a damager, posheya, who he's considered to be negligent, nasa ka'omer lo shchot li mikan v'shachet lo mikan. It's as if he told him, shecht it from me over here, and he shechted it from another side from over here, and so therefore it's going to be considered something that he is responsible for. And Rashi explains, Tavach uman shekilkel chayev v'kol shekein hedya. Now certainly if he's not a professional, he's chayev. Delo hayalo l'shochti. He shouldn't have taken such a job to shecht an animal, hol veino baki, since he's not an expert. And so that's what Shmuel says. Again, you have this Tavach who's a professional. Even if he's a professional, he's going to be chayev to pay because he's considered to be like a mazik and he's considered to be like a posheya. And the Gemara says, Lavali l'meimar maziku posheyahu. Well, why does Shmuel have to phrase it that way, that he's a mazik and he's a posheya? And the Gemara explains as follows. I Omar Maziku, if Shmuel just said he's considered to be a mazik, so Hava Minas, I might have thought, Hani Mili Hecha de Ka'avid B'schar, that maybe we're specifically talking about a shochet who's doing it and getting paid. So then he's at the level of a shomer sachar, that's why he has this greater responsibility. That's what I might have thought if we just said the word mazik. And the idea over here is that a mazik in general is chayiv. If we say a person is muad liolam, a mazik is chayiv even for onsim. And so therefore, if we're saying the word mazik, maybe it means we're talking about somebody who has a higher level of responsibility, he's being paid. That's what I might have thought. But I might have thought that if he was doing it for free, so then no, he would not be responsible. And so that's why Kamma Shmuel on posheya, that's why Shmuel uses the word posheya. He's teaching us, no, this is considered to be negligence. Even if he's doing it for free, it is something that he's responsible for. And Rashi explains, the ka'avid v'schar, I might have thought that we're talking about someone who's getting paid, the mazik chayev ba'onsin, because a mazik is chayev in ones. The adam muad liolam, bein shogeg, bein mezid, because we know adam muad liolam. Midakari le mazik, and I might have thought from the fact that he refers to him as a mazik, lechayev o ba'onis, making him chayev by accidents, shma mina ba'oso schar kamar, so then it sounds like we're talking about someone who gets paid, meaning to say like a shomer sachar is chayev not on all accidents, but he's chayev on geneva, v'yaved, etc. The Kamma Shmuel on the posheyahu. So the point over here is, Shmuel's teaching that he's negligent, that this is not a situation where it's considered an onus that he's responsible for because he's getting paid. Rather, it's considered a pshia. He should have been more careful. This is considered negligence, and that is why he is responsible. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rav Kamma bar Gurya l'Shmuel, Rav Kamma bar Gurya asked Shmuel the following question. This is from the Tosefta. Hanosin behemel l'tavach, if a person gives his animal over to a shochet, v'nivlen, and becomes an avela, meaning to say he messes up the shchita. So here it says, uman pater hedyot chayev. If he's a professional, he's pater. If he's just not somebody who's a professional, then it's really his fault. He shouldn't have undertaken the job. Then he's chayev. And then the Tosefta continues, v'im no sein schar, but if the person is being paid, bein hedyot bein uman chayev, then whether he's a hedyot or even if he's an uman, he's going to be chayiv. It seems clear from this Tosefta that by an uman we do make a distinction. Only if he's getting paid do we say he's responsible. He's not responsible if he's not getting paid. That sounds like it's not a situation of negligence. It sounds like it's not a pshia. That's why this is a question on Shmuel. Amar le, so Shmuel said back to him, li'acher mochach, let your mind be muddled, meaning he was saying this was not a good objection at all. Also, Humei Rabbanan, and then one of the Rabbanan came, and Kamosivla, he asked the same question. Amar le, so Shmuel said to him, Hashta shakalt maida shakal chavrach. Now you're going to take the same response that your friend took. Kwa'amina l'chu ana Rabbi Meir, because I was talking to you about Rabbi Meir's opinion. V'kwa'amri suli Rabbanan, and you're bringing me a proof from a Tosefta that's following a different Tana. It's following the Rabbanan. Amailo diakta mili, why weren't you medayik in my words? You should have been careful with what I said. Sha'ani omer, because how did I phrase it? I said maziku posheyahu. I said he's a damager, he's negligent. Nasek omer lo shchot li mikan. It's as if the owner said shechted over here, where it's a good shchita, v'shachid lo mikan, he shechted somewhere else. So that's the way I phrased it. So it was clear what I was saying. Man isle hai svara. Who do we find that holds of that kind of reasoning? Rabbi Meir. It's Rabbi Meir. Do amar mi boy le lemir me'anafshi. Rabbi Meir in general holds a person needs to be careful about these things. The point over here is Shmuel is saying I was following Rabbi Meir's particular shita. Don't ask me from a Tosefta that is following the Rabbanan. And the Gemara says, hey Rabbi Meir. Well, which Rabbi Meir are we referring to over here? We're saying that Rabbi Meir holds in general a person needs to be careful, but what Rabbi Meir is that? And the Gemara says, Ilema har Rabbi Meir. If you're going to say it's the following Rabbi Meir, the Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Kashru baila b'moseir, if the owner tied up the animal with its reins, v'nal b'fan of karoi, and closed the fence properly in front of it, and nevertheless, v'yotze v'hizik, nevertheless, the animal gets out and does damage, bein tam bein muad chayiv, whether the animal is a tam, whether the animal is a muad is chayiv, divrei Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. So if you're going to say that's the source that you see from over here, the owner needed to take that extra level of responsibility according to Rabbi Meir holds the owner responsible, but Hasam b'kroi pligi, but over there, it's actually a machlokas in terms of psukim. Rashi says Hasam b'kroi pligi ugzeres hakosov was just a gzeres hakosov over there. But Perek Shor Shanagach Arba v'chamisha, we find that in Perek Shor Shanagach Arba v'chamisha. And so the Gemara says Elohar Rabbi Meir, rather the source is the following Rabbi Meir D'Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Litzvoa lo edom v'tzavo shachar. Let's say he hires somebody to dye the fabric red, and instead he does black, or shachar v'tzavo edom, or the reverse, he hires him to dye it black, and he dyes it red. Rabbi Meir Omer no sin lo demeit smar. Rabbi Meir says that he's held responsible. He has to pay him for the value of the wool. And so there we see that there's this level of responsibility according to Rabbi Meir. But the Gemara says, Hasam over there also, it's not a proof. Bi'adayim kolumine. Rashi says, Bi'adayim kolumine sheniskavein l'shanos. Over there, it actually was that the person had kavana to do it differently. It's not a situation where the person wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. And we should note that literally the words Bi'adayim kolumine means that with his hands he burned it. But again, as Rashi understands, here it's different than in the case by the shechita. In the shechita, what he did was without intention. Here, when he dyed it the wrong color, that was something that the person was doing with intention. And the Gemara continues, Elohar Rabbi Meir, rather the source is the following Rabbi Meir. T'tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Nishbur akada v'lo silka, if his jug, it broke and he didn't remove it, it became like a boar. Nafla gemalo v'lo hamida, if his camel fell and he didn't stand it up. Rabbi Meir Omer chayev b'nis. Rabbi Meir says he's chayev in the damages. V'chachamim Omer, but the chachamim say pater midinei adam, he's pater in the earthly courts. V'chayev b'dinei shamayim, but he's chayev in the heavenly courts. V'kayim alon, and when we explain the machlokas in this Mishnah, we understand it to mean, we've established that it means as follows. The v'niskal posheya hu pligi, that they're arguing about when somebody stumbles, is that considered to be negligence? And so again, you see that Rabbi Meir is considering something to be negligence that the Rabbanan are not considering to be negligence, and that's why we see this is Rabbi Meir's shita. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba bar bar Chana says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Tavach uman shakil kel chayev, if you have a slaughter, a shochet that is professional and he messes up, he is chayev. Ve'afilu hu uman ketavchet tzipori, even if he's such an expert like those who are shochets and tzipori, they were real experts, still the person is considered to be responsible. And the Gemara says, when we Amar Rabbi Yochanan hachi, does Rabbi Yochanan really say this? V'amar Rabba bar bar Chana, but Rabba bar bar Chana says, Uvda hava kami de Rabbi Yochanan b'chnishta de ma'on, there was a case like this in front of Rabbi Yochanan in the synagogue of Ma'on. V'amar lein, he said to him, Zil aisi raya de mimchis letarnagolim ve'afterach. Go bring a proof that you're an expert at slaughtering chickens, and I'll say that you're pater. So there you see that if the person is an expert, then it's considered to be something that was beyond his control, and he's pater. And the Gemara answers to that, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan bechinam, kan b'schar. We make a distinction. If the person is doing it for free, so then he's not going to be responsible. If the person's being paid, so then he's chayev at a higher level, similar to a shomer sachar, and that's why he is responsible. And the Gemara says, Ki hadu yamar Rabbi Zeira, it's like what Rabbi Zeira said, Harotza she is chayev lo tavach, if a person wants that the person doing the shechita should be chayev, should be held responsible at a higher level, yakdim lo dinner, he should go ahead and before he does it, he should give him a dinner, he should give him some money. Again, that makes him like a shomer sachar who is responsible at a higher level. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question on this from the following Tosefta. Hamolech chitim litchon, if somebody brings his wheat to somebody to grind, velo lisason, and the person doing the grinding doesn't wet the grains properly, vason subin or morson, and he ends up making it into bran or coarse bran, he doesn't do a good job. Kemach lenachtom, somebody brings flour to a baker, vaso pas nipulin, he makes it into crumbly bread. Behema letavach venivla, he brings the behema, the animal, to someone to slaughter it, and he makes it an avela, it's not a kosher shechita. In all of these cases, says that Tosefta chayev, the person is chayev, meaning the worker is responsible, mipneishu kinosei sachar, because he's like a nosei sachar. Now, by saying he's like a nosei sachar, it sounds like he's responsible even if he's not getting paid, because automatically he's like a nosei sachar, as if it's considered to be negligence whether he's paid or not. That's why it's a question to what Rabbi Zeira said. It's a question to what we said above within Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan makes this distinction between doing it for free or getting paid. And the Gemara answers to this, Eima mipneishu nosei sachar. Sachar. Rather, the way you should interpret this Tosefta is because he actually is getting paid. Not that he's like a Nosei Sachar, but because he's getting paid, that's why he has this higher level of responsibility. And the Gemara continues, Hahu magrumta da'asoi l'kamei derav. There was an animal that was magrumta, means to say it wasn't shechted properly. We'll see Rashi in a moment. There's a machlokas tanoim whether magrumta is treif or not. So it came before Rav, tarfe, and Rav said that the animal is treif. Upatre l'tavach milashalume domain. Also, Rav said that even though the shochet didn't do a good job and the animal is treif, but he said that shochet is potter from paying any money. Pagu Bey Rav Kahana Ravasi Bau Gavra. So Rav Kahana and Ravasi, they met up with the owner of the animal, who now had really lost out. The animal is treif, plus he didn't get any money back from the shochet. So Amruleh, so they said to him, Avid Bach Rav Tarti, Rav did two things for you. And the Gemara wants to clarify, my Tarti, what are these two things that were done? Ilay Matarti Legreus, if you're going to say that what they were telling him was, he did two bad things for you. First of all, Rav should have said the animal is kosher. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, he should have followed Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, who says Magrumta is kosher. V'tarfa k'Rabbanan, and instead Rav said that it's treif like the Rabbanan. That was the first bad thing that Rav did for you. V'inami k'Rabbanan, now if it's true that it's like the Rabbanan and the animal was treif, so at least he should have said that the shochet is chayiv to pay for it, but he didn't even say that. He said the shochet is potter. So if that's what Rav Kahana and Rav Asi were saying, umishari l'meimar ki haygavna, but is it permissible for people to say such a thing after a psak halacha is issued? V'atanya, but we learned in a brayso, after the judge leaves, when the court case is over, lo yomer ani mezaka v'chavere mechayvin. He shouldn't announce, I really said that the person was innocent, but my friends, my colleagues are the one that says that the person was chayiv. Aval ma'aseh, but what should I do? Shechaverei rabu olai, because there were more of them than me, I was outvoted. He should not announce what is happening behind closed doors in the court. V'yalzen nemer, about this it says, holech rachel megala sod, somebody who goes and he tells things and he reveals the secrets, that's inappropriate. And so that would not have been appropriate for them to say that what he paskined wasn't really the proper psak, that Rav paskined two things bad against you. So that cannot be what Rav Kahana and Rav Asi were saying. And so the Gemara says, Elatarti l'mal yusa. Rather, what they said was there were two things he did for you that were actually good. They were saying Rav did a good job. Lo ochlach safek isura. Number one, he didn't make you eat something that was a doubt that maybe it's actually treif. And furthermore, umonech misafek gazela. Furthermore, he prevented you from stealing in a doubtful situation here. That might have been considered stealing if one would have made the shochet pay. And Rashi explains, Magrumta shachat mitoch achas hatabos v'higrim chutz bein tabas letabas. Rashi is referring to the rings of the trachea. So he shechted within one ring, and then it went outside of that ring to another ring between the two rings of the trachea. V'shayir molechut al pnei ruba. But the majority was shechted in that particular ring. So he did the majority, so to speak, was done correctly, but then the knife went outside of where it's supposed to go. So that's a machlokas tanoim. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, ma'achshalei b'molei achut al pnei ruba. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says in such a situation where you have that majority done in the proper way, so to speak, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says kosher. Rabbanan bo al pnei kula. The Rabbanan say the entire thing. It can never travel outside of that one ring where you're doing the shchita. Ba'ugavra bala behem. Again, then they met up with the owner of the animal, and they said that there were two things. Rav Kahana and Rav Asi said there were two things that Rav did. L'cheshayotza b'dayan kamayri b'sanhedrin. When a judge leaves, he shouldn't reveal what was going on behind closed doors. And then finally, the Gemara said actually it was two good things. Delo achlech safek isura. It's a doubt whether this is treif or not. Mesafkale hilchas hakaman. There's a doubt. Who does the halacha follow? Ikarabonan da'asri, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda demachshir. Do we follow the Rabbanan that says aser? Do we follow Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says kosher? Umonech misafek gazeli. He also prevented you from stealing possibly dik sheirahi, because if it was a kosher animal, havetavich potter, then the shochet would be potter. So therefore, he said you can't collect from the shochet. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, it was stated, Hamara dinar l'shulchani, if somebody shows a dinar to a money changer, Rashi explains, Hamara dinar l'dasim tovu v'yikablenu mechaveru. He wants to know if this is a good coin, and should he accept it from his friend, is it considered to be good currency? So he shows it to the shulchani says it's a good coin, v'nim sarah, but it turns out it's a bad coin. So Tani chada uman potter had your chayiv. There's one brayso that says that if he was a professional, he's potter. Now if he's not a professional, of course he's chayiv, because he should be chayiv, because he shouldn't be rendering a judgment. But if he's a professional, he's potter in that case. He's not held responsible. But we have another brayso that says bein uman bein hedyot chayiv. It doesn't matter whether he's a hedyot. Of course, he's chayiv. But even if he's an uman, he is chayiv. He's held responsible in that situation because he gave a bad verdict, so to speak, about this coin. And the Gemara says, Amar Papa says, Kitanya Uman Potter. When we say that an Uman is Potter, Kegon Danku ve'Isser, that's like Danku and Isser. Rashi says, Danki ve'Isser Sholchanin Umnin Hayer. These were experts. They were expert money changers. So those individuals who are really experts, the Lo Tzrichi Lemigmar Klal, they don't need to learn any at all. They know the coins, and therefore if they made a mistake, it was certainly some kind of an accident. They are not held responsible. That's the Brisa that says that the Uman is Potter. But the Gemara says if that's the case, but if they're such experts, well, how did they make a mistake? What happened? And the Gemara says to that, To b'sichsa chadata. They made a mistake with a coin from a new press. It was right at the time that it was coming from the new press, and therefore even they wouldn't necessarily know because it was a new kind of coin that was in circulation. And the Gemara continues, there was a woman, she showed a dinar to Rabbi Chia, Amar Lama Alyu, so he said to her that it's a good coin. The next day she came to him, she said to him, I showed this coin, I tried to use it, they said it's a bad coin, I wasn't able to use the coin. Amar Leila Rav, so he said to Rav, Zil Chalfe Nehila, V'kasava Pinkasi Din Asik Bish. Go and exchange it for her and write on my tablet that this was a bad deal. As Rashi says, Dain Asik Bish Sechora Rohi, it was a bad business deal. Shal Iske Chinim was for nothing, Ani Mafsid, I'm losing for nothing. Shalohaya Lila Rosa, I shouldn't have even looked at it. I shouldn't have rendered a judgment on that particular coin. And the Gemara continues, Umayshna dinchu ve'isr de petiri. And what's the difference that dinchu and isr, why are they pater? Mishum de lo tzrichi lemigmar. The reason was because they don't need to learn, they're already experts. But if that's the case, Rabbi Chia nami lav lemigmar kaboy. Wasn't Rabbi Chia also an expert? Why was Rabbi Chia holding himself responsible to pay? He didn't need to learn, he was an expert, he shouldn't have been responsible. And the Gemara says to that, Rabbi Chia lifnim mishuras hadin hu da'aver. Rabbi Chia was actually going lifnim mishuras hadin, he was going beyond the letter of the law. Really, he was not responsible because he was an expert, but nevertheless he wanted to pay. Kedetani Rav Yosef, like Rav Yosef taught, v'hodata lahem, it says in the pasuk, v'hodata lahem, zeh, this refers to, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video, on Daf Kuf Amar Aleph.